Is this thing on?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the SA Voice podcast. I'm your co-host for this episode, Amanda, joined by Ellie, and we are welcoming Austin and Millen here with us today. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Doing well, thanks. And yourself?
We're doing pretty good, I think. So can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do, who you are?
Yeah,
Sure.
Absolutely. So we're both second-year law students at Queen's University, and we're both student caseworkers at the Queen's Elder Law Clinic. And I know that elder law is a little bit deceiving, but we don't just assist senior citizens. We assist anybody in the community that may have difficulty affording legal counsel. So students are definitely the perfect clients for us. Typically, us as students, we don't have a large income while in school, but what we do in the law clinic is provide free legal services to anybody in the community under the guise of a practicing lawyer.
Ellen, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Austin just about covered it. I mean, I was looking for more to say, but
That's it.
very good explanation.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what kind of services do you think students would benefit from the law clinic?
So the main services that we offer are wills and power of attorneys. These are two different types of legal documents, which we'll get into later in the podcast. But it's mainly drafting of these documents and tailoring them to whatever the student's needs would be.
Okay. Awesome. So what is a will? Why don't we start there?
For sure. So a will is a legally binding document that allows you to plan for now and for what happens to your assets after you pass. So a will contains many legally binding provisions as well as non-legally binding wishes such as funeral arrangements. So you basically appoint someone to carry out your wishes according to your will, and you grant them the power to assess your assets upon your death. This person is called an executor. So they basically handle everything after you pass.
Okay. And why do you think students would benefit from that? I mean, most people that are in college aren't really, I mean, I'm a little different. I might be thinking about death, but most people in college aren't thinking about that. So why do you think students would benefit from that now?
Definitely. So I know I'm a student as well. It's not something that crosses my mind very much, right? But there's actually a lot of valid reasons that people our age could benefit from having a will. Life can be very unpredictable. So I think it's always better to plan for the unexpected. And this is one of the ways that you can do that. As a legal adult, your assets will be distributed according to your wishes if you have a will, which is something very important, especially if you're investing or doing stuff like that, which I know a lot of people are doing these days. The more control you have over your life is always better, in my opinion, as well. If you have something like pets, that's something that you can provide for in your will should something unexpected happen to you. If you have a social media account, I know our whole lives are on social media. That's a huge part of them. That's also something that you can include in your will. What happens to that after you pass as well? And the last thing that's really important is perhaps giving to people from outside of your family. I know a lot of people have partners, things like that at our age, but legally, all your assets or everything you have would go to your parents should something happen to you. So that's a really important thing to consider and perhaps think about.
Nice.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, that's a great explanation. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I didn't know that about social media, that you could include that in your will. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's super important.
Yeah, all I have right now
chats.
is I have a file folder in my filing cabinet that says "if I die." And it's got like all my passwords.
It's good to have one of those as well, for sure. But like you mentioned as well, Ellen, like I know a lot of students aren't thinking about this, but that kind of is a broad statement that goes towards everybody in life. I mean, it's something that people kind of just keep pushing off as you grow older. It's one of those things that I think everybody knows, like, I should make a will, but so many people just keep letting it go. And like Millen said, life is unpredictable. If you can get it now while it's free, while students, I mean, it's a perfect time just to get it now, rather than having to pay for a lawyer. I mean, it's never fun having to hire a lawyer. It can be very costly. So you can get the same kind of quality of work right now while it's free, and you can always revoke or kind of update these documents as you grow older and gain more assets or kind of change your relationships in life. So you can get it done for free. You might as well just be over-prepared rather than under-prepared, having that kind of peace of mind that it's all taken care of. And if you ever need to change it, by all means, it's really easy to do. You can either get in contact with us again and you can change it, or you can kind of do some non-legally binding things as well that'll work. So it's very easy to update, but you might as well get on top of it now.
Awesome. So I have one more question about that. Sorry. So what happens to your assets if you don't have a will? So Millen, you said everything would go to your parents, but I mean, doesn't that depend on the situation? What if your parents are separated? What if there's contentions there? Like, so what's supposed to happen? If you don't have a will, isn't there something where the government comes in and does something with your assets?
So basically, if you don't have a will, you're considered to have died intestate. So the government, or sorry, the law has certain rules about intestacy, where it basically flows in different ways depending on what your family relations are. So if you have a situation where perhaps both your parents have passed and you have a sibling, then it would perhaps go to the sibling. But it would be interpreted based on the situation, very situation specific. But the default would be if you do have both your parents and they're in the picture and you do die intestate, it would go to your parents as your next of kin.
Okay.
Depending on if you have a child or if you're married as well. So if you do have a child, it is going to flow to any dependents, or if you are married, not common law, but it will go to your married, your wife or husband.
I will say, I was saying the intestacy rules, thinking about the typical single college student, not married, no kids.
Yeah.
But obviously that kind of stuff changes the situation.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely some good information to know for sure. You guys had also mentioned a power of attorney. I've never heard of that term. Can you kind of explain that one to us?
Yeah, for sure. I'll jump in here on that one. So what Millen just described is kind of like taking care of your property for after you die, what happens with all the property. Whereas I'll discuss the power of attorney for property, which is essentially granting somebody the power to help manage your property or your finances while you're still living. And there's a whole bunch of different uses for this, but just to be clear at the beginning, the power of attorney is the document that you sign. Whereas the attorney is the person that you're granting that power to. Just so if you hear us mentioning the word attorney, it's not your lawyer. I know that's something that really confused me at the beginning, but just in case you say attorney, it's really the person you're selecting to help manage your finances or your property. And so just to kind of go into a couple of the roles that they can do, they can help out with, like, say, your banking or paying your finances for you, or doing anything with your investments or paying your bills for you. And you can kind of dictate. It's all about having control, just like a will. You want to have as much control as possible about your affairs. So you can kind of outline in your document what role they may have, when it can actually become effective. So this may be immediately. Right now, I want somebody to be able to help me with my finances. Or it could be, say, when I retire. When I retire, I want someone else to make sure that my bills are paid or kind of manage my investments for me. And so you're appointing somebody that you trust to help you out with this. Most commonly, it is definitely for incapacity. So say if you're ever unable to manage your property or finances, again, life is unpredictable. You never know. The accidents happen. You could be put into a situation where you're not able to manage your finances. And that's where this comes in hand, and it'll help you out. But again, it can also be temporary in duration. Say you're going on a vacation and you have a business and you want somebody to run that business for you. You can let your attorney for property come in and run that business or manage your investments for you. Does that all make sense? Or was I going a little quick there?
No, it definitely makes a lot of sense. When I first heard power of attorney, I first thought lawyer too. So it's good to know that it doesn't have to be a lawyer. It can be someone that you trust, like maybe a business partner or a close friend or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, you can always put limitations on it. So the things that they can and can't do, but you definitely want this to be somebody that you really trust with your information that can actually truly help you out in times of need. I should note that the one thing that you can't let them do is make a will for you. So they can have complete rights to manage your property, any property you have, but they can't make the will. That's really sacred to the person. And yeah, other than that, I guess another interesting thing is you may be deemed incapable of managing your financial affairs and such, but still grant that power to somebody else. However, you may not be able to. It all kind of is in the power of the court. So rather than leaving it to chance, it's another thing. You might as well get ahead of the problem and just kind of provide now what you'd like to happen in those situations.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely. And Austin was mainly talking about actually power of attorney for property, but you can also have a power of attorney for personal care. So this is basically a very similar document in the sense that it's a legally binding document, but instead of granting someone power to make decisions regarding your property, you're actually giving someone power to make decisions about your personal care should you become unable to make those decisions. So personal care can include things like healthcare, accommodations, medical care, diet, hygiene, and all matters regarding your safety. So basically they can make medical decisions on your behalf based on professional evaluation. And they can also make all other personal care decisions. So if you're someone who has like some sort of a degenerative disease or some sort of condition where you know it may get to the point where you are going to be unable to make those medical decisions, this can be a really important document to have.
And yeah, thanks for jumping in there and explaining that one, Melon. An important distinction as well is that this document's only ever going to come into effect when you become incapable, if that was ever the case. Whereas power of attorney for property, you can just have somebody help you out. The power of attorney for personal care is going to be medical decisions that only happen when you can no longer provide for yourself and make these kinds of decisions. And there are certain ones, such as medical decisions, where you will need a professional evaluation to make sure that you're not deemed or able to make these decisions for yourself.
So again, what happens if someone doesn't have a power of attorney? So where would the default decision maker lie with a typical college student? Or another add-on question to that, maybe you can answer both at the same time. So if someone 21, 22 years old has decided that they want their best friend to be their power of attorney, can their parents contest that? You know, so how does that work if they feel like it's been coerced, or if it's an abusive relationship or anything like that? Is that something that you've come across?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. I mean, unfortunately, that is definitely something that does happen. And there's always ways to contest it. I mean, that's one of the best reasons to go through, like, you can make some of these documents on your own, but it's definitely best to go with legal services, because we can make sure that it's well documented and to ensure that these types of things don't occur, such as just like getting people alone rather than having anyone near them, and like make sure that it is their true intentions. So there are ways to challenge it, but at the end of the day, if somebody it's their will, or sorry, their own mindset, their own intentions, and that is truly what they wish, then somebody can't contest it just because they disagree with that decision. If there are things like an abusive relationship or some kind of undue influence, you can absolutely kind of overturn it and make sure it doesn't work. But if that is their true intentions, then that is what rules the day. And in regards to if you don't have one, then there is an application process. People can apply to do this, but it is a bit more costly, and it can delay the process. When you're looking at time-sensitive issues here, you really want this to be already taken care of and already put in place, so it's as organized and it's the person you truly want. Whereas it may just go to a family member that applies that may not be the person that you actually think has your best interest at heart, which is unfortunate, but that is the case in many situations. So you want to have the person that you think is the most reliable, is the most trustworthy, and that will actually make the best decisions on your behalf.
Definitely. And talking about a situation where it could be someone that you don't want, I'm not sure if you guys heard recently, but this documentary came out about Britney Spears. And she was basically in a legal arrangement called a conservatorship, which is very similar to a power of attorney for property, where you're making decisions over property. And it's actually her dad who's in the conservatorship. And it's a situation where, I don't know, it's contested. I guess there's a whole Free Britney movement where people don't think it's her dad. They don't think she wants her dad in that position. But it kind of reminded me of these situations with power of attorneys and what can happen if you're not explicitly clear. And you can end up in a situation where potentially someone you wouldn't want making those decisions for you, making those decisions. So it's always best to provide for it ahead of time.
Yeah, and really think about it before you appoint someone your power of attorney.
Exactly, yeah. It has to be someone that you trust. Ideally, it should be someone who's very close to you and lives close to you as well. Even if you trust someone out in Nova Scotia, perhaps that's not the best person to be making decisions about your medical future if they're not close by and they can't accurately assess the situation.
Something else that might come into play here for students that might be more applicable, I mean, setting their own power of attorney is obviously important, but they also might be in a position of being a power of attorney for one of their parents. I mean, I'm in a position now, I'm 46 and my mom is 75. And so now she's trying to set me up as her power of attorney. And one of the reasons for that is to prevent her bank accounts from being frozen, and so that I can pay the bills on her mortgage and things if she happens to become incapacitated, or if she passes, or if she's in a coma, then I have that ability to control that and prevent some more hardship down the road. So is that something that you can speak to for students that might be in a position where they become a power of attorney? Anything to consider there?
Definitely. And that's actually a situation that we deal with a lot at the clinic. People coming to us, and we're actually dealing with them rather than their parents, because their parents have reached a point where perhaps they perhaps have dementia or some sort of other degenerative disease where they have difficulty with that capacity. And it is really good if you do think that your parents are perhaps suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, or they may get to the point where they do get incapacitated, to try and get it done as soon as you can. Just because if you don't get it done, it can become a lengthy process where you have to apply through the courts in order to get that access that you need. And if you want your parents provided for, oftentimes, like perhaps they need personal care and stuff like that, you do really need the access to the bank account. So if that's something that you see potentially happening with your parents or your grandparents, it's definitely good to get the documents done as soon as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And likewise, if you are appointed the executor of a will and you need to administer the estate, that's something that we can help out as well. And we can kind of guide you through that process. It is a bit complicated when, if somebody passes, it's a lot to deal with, especially like you're in the midst of grieving, but also the stress of kind of dealing with all their property and what to do. And so we can also assist and provide some advice with the estate administration as well for the executors. And again, yeah, there might be many students that are put into that position as well.
Nice. So for someone who may not have been thinking about it before, and then they kind of watch this and they're like, oh, maybe I should like start looking into that. How would that process go about? Like, when would be the best time, if there is one, to kind of start looking into it? And like, what can you guys do to help support those people?
I mean, the sooner the better, especially if you are a student. Like, I would do it now while you're a student and you don't have an income level, because I mean, because there is so much demand, we can only tailor our services to those that have a lower income level in the community. So now while you're a student, you may not have an income, apply now and get it done for free. And yeah, if you make the application, just go to our website at the Queen's Elder Law Clinic. There's an application form, just submit that. It doesn't take long to do, and we'll get in touch with you. And then we kind of lead the process from there. Well, we'll reach out to you. We'll ask what your wishes are and make sure that the entire process is adhered to, and that it is truly your intentions. And like, maybe we'll ask those questions, those probing questions of things that you may not have thought about before. For instance, things like when you're a power of attorney for personal care, like what if you ever came into the unfortunate situation where you were on life support and there's no hope of recovery? Like, what would you want to happen in that situation? Would you want to continue to be on life support, or would you want to have more of a natural death? And it's things like, most people don't think about even getting these documents, but they don't think about the nuances involved in them as well in these situations where nobody wants to think that it's a reality, but it is a potential for anyone, unfortunately. And so you might as well try and get on this as quick as possible, start thinking about it, and just have those documents in place, because as soon as you get it done, if you get it done as a student and now for free, you don't have to worry about it. It's just off. It's not like a situation where all of a sudden you are getting up there in an age and you might be approaching where you're like, oh, what am I going to do? And you haven't done it yet. Or there might be, if you're waiting until the point where there might be capacity concerns, well, you might not be able to get the document done at that point. You may not have the requisite capacity to make the document. So it's just getting ahead of the situation and just having it checked off. So many people go through their life without a will, and it's such a relief knowing that everything is taken care of, and that if, in the unfortunate event that you do pass, you're not leaving your family with a headache or all this added stress of figuring out what to do. It's all organized, it's all there for them, and at least that process is absolutely as simple as possible for them. And we've had many students come through the program, and we'd love for many more to as well.
And I'll just add, it's not just for students, of course. If you have parents or grandparents who are in Kingston, Napanee, Belleville, those are areas where we have clients, they can think about applying as well. As you know, it's very important to have these documents done. So if they don't have them done, and you know, after seeing this, you ask them and they say they don't, perhaps they can apply as well.
Okay, so your clinic is 100% pro bono, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly, 100% pro bono.
And do you know what the income cutoff is? Is there a specific number of low income that people have to meet for a threshold, or?
There's not a specific thing, or there's not a specific threshold. It kind of just gets evaluated. So if you're in the lower income, you might as well shoot in the application, and they'll get evaluated, and we'll let you know as quickly as possible whether or not we can take you on or not.
Amazing. So can you just repeat the website so people, if they can't get it up on the screen, so people can...
Yeah, it's for sure. It's the Queen's Elder Law Clinic. If you just Google that, it'll pop right up.
Okay.
And it's right downtown Kingston. And yeah, just to mention, like like you said, it is completely pro bono. It helps us get back to the community. But as we mentioned at the beginning, we're students. So I mean, the other side of the coin is it helps us students really get involved and get some practical experience and practice working with clients and writing legal documents. So we're still in law school and we act under the guise of a practicing lawyer, and she makes sure everything's adhered to. But it allows us to actually get some practice while in school, and at the same time give back to the community and give free legal advice.
And with COVID restrictions, are you doing online appointments or are you doing in person?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So with COVID restrictions, we can no longer do in-person signings as much. We have managed to do a couple, but it's very isolated and on a need basis. But what we are actually doing is using Zoom to the max, and we're doing remote executions. So the government has allowed it, so we can do remote executions of these documents. So we're trying to get as many as we can done remotely.
Amazing.
Yes, you don't have to leave your house and you can do all this for free.
Exactly.
So we're giving it a shot.
Sold.
Perfect. Glad to hear.
Okay, any other questions, Amanda?
Do you guys have any advice for like people who are just kind of starting to look into this, like any certain starting point you think they should get into so they don't kind of get overwhelmed with all this new information at once?
Reach out to us. You don't need to know you don't have to have any prior knowledge at all or really have thought about things. We'll guide you the whole step of the way. Like so many people reach out to us and they're like, I haven't really thought about it, but I know I need to get this done. All right, perfect. We'll work with you. We'll, like I said, we'll ask those probing questions and get you thinking about certain things. And we can do it over multiple calls. It doesn't need to be just the first call, we get everything and it's done. It's like, we can get you thinking about things and talk about certain matters and kind of get an idea of what your property is or what kind of decisions that you want others to be able to help you with. And then you can think about that, come back, and we can do it over a series, and we can always change things as well. So I just reach out.
Perfect. I think that's a great service.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know you were there. I've been in Kingston all my life. That's fantastic.
Well, I'm happy to now.
Okay, thanks for joining us, guys. We really appreciate that.
Thanks so much for having us.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we will hopefully be able to give you guys some referrals to kind of help you out and get some students over there to kind of get thinking about that. Thank you guys so much again for joining us, and we hope that you all got some really good information and some good tips on getting wills and power of attorneys all sorted and kind of getting into that. So thanks again, and we will see you guys in another podcast episode soon.